And if you read the history of England at that time, you will see this conflict really. And on the other hand, it is also at the political level. Because this feudal nobility, they are holding on to the political power. Now these people also want the political power. Alright? So these people, the upcoming bourgeois, now therefore also questioning, okay, this stasis, okay, the idea of stasis, the idea of order. Because they are saying that this order does not give us any place. So where is our place in this order? Therefore they are now coming up with the question, with the concept of change. So what for the last 400 years, the dominant thought or the dominant motive in society has been order. Now we see from the 18th or the 17th century, the dominant order becomes change. Okay? So change is in the air. There is change in economic power, there is change in political power, there is change also in the world of thought. Because the great people of the Enlightenment, the great scientists of the Enlightenment are all now calling for change. And what are they telling? They are not telling that, okay, that we want change, we want change. They are telling that change is the law of the natural world. Okay, they are telling that the natural world changes. Okay, and then they wrote it also, the world changeth. Okay, previously they used to say that the world is in order. From the time of the creation, the world has been like this. But these people are telling that the world changes, and the change is the dominant nature of the natural world. And all the work, if you see during this time, alright, the scientific work is around this field of change. Change being the dominant thing in society. Okay, the mechanisms of chemical reactions were being devised at this time. Okay, Lavoisier, okay, Priestley, etc. They are all telling that things, elements change from one to the other. Okay, mechanisms of chemical reaction are coming up at this time. Okay, and most importantly, the field where the change was really felt was biology. Okay, for biology, for all this while, the idea was that God had created, okay, this animals, okay, and had then made that man the superior to all the animals, and have told them that, okay, you have now dominion over all these animals, all written in Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Then comes Darwin, okay, in the middle of the 19th century, and completely overturns this thing, and then tells that change is the only reality in biology. Okay, about all these different things in biology, and we as a biologist understand that every day now. Okay, that biology is a very complex field. Okay, there is no, unlike physics or chemistry or mathematics, there are nearly no unifying laws of biology. Okay, the only unifying law of biology is the law of natural selection and of evolution, which says that things change. Okay, one species changes to another species. Okay, a dominant species will give way to a less dominant species. Okay, when surrounding conditions change. Okay, a population of an island will completely change from one era to another era. Okay, depending on what sort of natural conditions are there. Okay, therefore change becomes now the operative word in biology, right? And at the same time, if you look at it, this entire theory I'm talking about, of this primitive communist societies and slavery and feudalism and capitalism, this entire idea that human society has also changed also came up at the same time nearly, in a gap of 1 decade, and this was propounded by Karl Marx. Okay, so Karl Marx and Darwin, when Darwin is proposing change, okay, as a dominant force in the natural world, at the same time Karl Marx is proposing change as a dominant force in the social world, nearly parallelly, if you look at it. Okay, and this parallelism is astounding, because they did not really talk to each other. There is some correspondence between them which has come to light, but there was really no real correspondence between them. But they are both looking at change. Okay, and they are telling that change is the more dominant thing, and this change comes from existing conflict. Okay, there is conflict between the existing population, be it the population of producers and the people who are involved in the production process, or be it the conflict between a prey and a predator species, or between a plant and a pollinator species. There is some sort of conflict. Okay, some sort of competition. Okay, and therefore there is a change which comes out of that. So over this entire period of time, change becomes a sort of the dominant motive. So the question is that, therefore we see that in the social world, changes from the order to change, and then the scientific world, the entire focus of scientific world also changes from order to change. So the question therefore comes up is that whether we are looking, whether this entire, our understanding of science is somehow a product of this context. And then if you look at, and this I can go on talking about various such illustrations. When this can be illustration, this can be general principles also. For example, the capitalism did also another thing. Okay, previously it was these groups of people, the serfs, the lords, okay, the priests, etc., who were in the center of society. Okay, capitalism, because it required free labor from individuals. Okay, a person can go and work in anybody's factory. Okay, and it also required free consumers. Okay, that means a person can buy either Coca-Cola or Pepsi. Okay, or go to this mall or that mall. Okay, it required individuals to be the center of society. Okay, so individuals, so rather than groups, which were, for all previous times, it was groups of people, it was communities, nations, peoples, okay, who were the center of society. Now capitalism developed individuals as a central focal point in society. Okay, and before that also, if you therefore in science, if you see, individuals or particulation was never a real concern of science. If you see, before that, everything was being looked at the mass level or at the population level. If you look at it in biology, look at it in physics, okay, there were some esoteric concepts in ancient Greek philosophy or Indian philosophy like Kanad or Epicurus, where there was some concept of some particulate nature of matter or etc. like that. But there was never a dominant thought in society. Suddenly we see that nearly at the end of the 19th century, this particulate, okay, atomistic nature of matter became the dominant thought. And I don't know if any of you have tried to see the progression of this idea. I find it very surprising that suddenly this particulate nature of matter became a dominant thought. And within a period of 50 years, this is the only sort of thought process which is there. Now we have gone down from atoms to where. Subatomic atoms, sub to quarks and to things which we don't even know if they exist or not. Okay, so the question is that as capitalism started focusing on the individual at the center of society, okay, science also started to look at particulate matter as the center of the material reality. Okay, and then it started to, and how did it define this particulate matter? These are atoms which are free to make and break bonds, okay, which are free to do transactions, which are free to give and take energy from here and there. Okay, just like the freed up serf who is now ready to sell his labor to this factory owner, to that factory owner, okay, or to go to this country or to that country. Alright. So this sort of motivations, and there is really no sort of, you would really not see such progresses in scientific thought where you would say, okay, there was this logical progression from this massive nature of material reality to this particular nature of material reality. Apparently suddenly came up one day, in the context where the entire society was looking at the individual as the center of social reality. Okay, so in this way, there has been this constant, I think, input, okay, of the social context in science, and capitalism has been a very, and that is the age in which we are living, and therefore it has been a very powerful impetus on science. So I dare to make the statement that the science that we do today is capitalist science. Okay, it is not science which is objective science. It is not capitalist in the way that it is being funded by some corporation. Okay, it is capitalist science because the way we look at material reality in a scientific process is colored, okay, by the way capitalism has shaped society. The capitalism has required society to be in a form for it to be able to propagate forwards. Okay, so this sort of thing I think is very much there in science, and it is not something that we really think about when we in our day-to-day practice of science. Okay, but I think it is important to think about it, right? Because that will allow us to approach our scientific work also in a much more realistic manner. Alright, so because every reality which we see can be interpreted in various ways, okay, depending on what sort of social context you are thinking of it. Okay, and therefore in science also there is this sort of a dialectical relationship which I call. Alright, a dialectical means that there is every entity, a scientific thought, idea has two different sides to it, or maybe more than two different sides to it, which can be a thesis or an antithesis of each other, or which can be basically two planes at which we are looking at things. Okay, so I and my friends Levontin and Levins use this example wherever we talk about it as a question of tuberculosis. You all know tuberculosis is a disease. Okay, if you go and talk with a scientist, a microbiologist, okay, and say that, okay, what causes tuberculosis, okay, and if this person knows nothing about anything else, okay, he's completely cut off from the world, he only works in his lab, he's a great microbiologist, he will tell that this bacteria, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, causes tuberculosis. He's 100% right, okay. What he's describing is objective reality, objective truth, alright. On the other hand, if you go and talk to a doctor who does not know anything about microbiology, okay, or a social worker or a health worker who meets TB patients, okay, who does not know anything, who doesn't even know about the existence of bacteria, if you ask him or her that what causes tuberculosis, he or she, based on her objective experience, will say that malnutrition causes tuberculosis, because he or she will see that 100% of tuberculosis patients are suffering from malnutrition. Okay, both are describing objective reality. Alright, so who is true, who is right?
But they are not in conflict also.
No, they are not in conflict, that's what I am saying. They are not in conflict, but when you are approaching a research question, this can become an issue of conflict. That's what I am saying. That's where a consciousness of this process can, this is as an illustration, a consciousness of this dichotomy, the dialectics is required. Means I am saying,
I am telling that which one of this is true is not a well formulated question.
No, now we know that both are true. They are not in conflict. But if you think of a scenario that I am in a lab, okay, where I am a social worker, I am come to work in a lab, and my research advisor is a microbiologist. Okay, for him this malnutrition thing doesn't exist, and for me the bacteria doesn't exist. Okay, therefore we will be in conflict when we are actually approaching the question of tuberculosis, and such conflicts often arise. Means tuberculosis is easy because we know that both of these are there. So this is basically a synthesis. Okay, but they can easily be put as a thesis and antithesis. Means I can try to spend my entire life trying to prove that tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Another person can try to spend his entire life trying to prove that tuberculosis is caused by malnutrition, and both of them will be able to produce reams of papers in learned journals proving that both are true, without completely disregarding the other. Because there would be statistical correlation, there would be experimental evidence for each. Okay, so but that's what I'm saying. They can be thesis and antithesis. Okay, we can develop a synthesis of them because if we are conscious that they are dialectical positions. If in this condition, we can even go one step further than this, because you can always say that there are various cases where we know that people who are not suffering from malnutrition, some of them also suffer from tuberculosis. Okay, because there are these examples in Europe, Shelley and all, who died from tuberculosis, didn't have any malnutrition problems. Okay, so then the third thing comes in, which is genetic susceptibility. Okay, some people are more susceptible, okay, to the tuberculosis infection. Therefore, the third aspect comes into the picture. Okay, therefore, one person can only say that only genetic susceptibility is, or it is the genes which will cause TB. Okay, and this in biology, this has given rise to this two very broad areas which are in conflict with each other actually. One is genetic determinism, okay, and one is holism. Genetic determinism tries to say that everything is determined by the genes. Okay, there is nothing else which determines things. All right, and then there is the school of thought which is holistic, which says that the genes have got very minimal influence, if any. Okay, entire thing is controlled by the environment. Okay, and they are completely antithetical positions. If we think of them, they are dialectical positions, right? Therefore, if we do not understand that both these positions are products of their social context. Genetic determinism is a product of this atomism which has been the dominant thought in science, okay, where everything has been brought down to particulate reality, where particles of matter can determine everything. Like the atom determines the nature of the element, and that determines the nature of the molecule, the nature of the interactions, etc. Okay. On the other hand, holism, which was actually born in reaction to genetic determinism, okay, completely disregards effects of this material reality and talks of population level phenomena which only happens because of interactions between individuals. Okay, they are completely antithetical positions, and there are strong schools of thought which are happy to live with each of this. Okay, question is that what I am saying is that both of them, I think, are products of the social context, and therefore if we want to approach a research project or a research question, we should be conscious of this, that what we are looking at might be objective reality, but they are product of this social context. They are basically our thought processes as a social being, okay, are molded by this processes, by this dominant thoughts in society at that point of time, and then that gives us or makes us approach specific scientific questions in specific ways. Okay, so I think this is basically what I want to just throw to you as a sort of thought, okay, which you might think about now and discuss with people, because it is something very scary to a scientist when someone tells us that no, what you are looking at is not not reality, but because of some effect of capitalism or some effect or something else, and then that creates this sort of problem, and there's a lot of misunderstanding also which is created, because there is this lot of misunderstanding which is created in society, that there's something called as hyper-Darwinism which goes on. Apparently that Darwin or Darwinian natural selection basically leads to genetic determinism, okay, or Darwinian natural selection is completely based on this idea of survival of the fittest, and competition between all, but that is not exactly actually the case, because whatever studies of animal societies, okay, or of animal species has been done, it has been found that the dominant social system is altruism, okay, where individuals basically give up their own benefit in order to help others. Okay, and that is the dominant thing. So this idea that hyper-Darwinism is a dominant thought, is a dominant process, okay, in the natural world, and therefore that should be the case in the social world, because that is how it is sold. Okay, that you should not, that the poor and the weak should naturally die out. It means there are some people who are richer, stronger, more powerful because it is a Darwinian process. They have been selected for that. But actual study of natural selection shows completely the opposite thing. It shows that always the systems which are altruistic in nature are the ones which are selected in nature. Okay, which have been selected, which have survived in nature. So we should also know these things when confronting these questions, okay, of Darwinism, of determinism, both in the physical sciences and in the natural sciences, because I think none of these are free from the social context. Whatever we are looking at is based on the social context in which we are working. So I think I should end here, and I think there should be a lot of questions and discussions and objections to this sort of formulation, and I would be happy if we have a discussion about this.
একটা কমেন্ট আছে